In a quiet suburban neighborhood where the streets were lined with neatly trimmed lawns and colorful flower beds, life moved at a slow, predictable pace. The houses stood close together, their windows reflecting the golden hues of the setting sun. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, at least by face, and where small talk over fences was as common as morning coffee. But not everyone in this seemingly peaceful community got along perfectly. Karen Thompson lived in one of the cozy homes on Maple Street. She was a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing and an outspoken personality that made her stand out. Karen prided herself on keeping things in order. Whether it was organizing the annual block party or reminding neighbors to clean up after their dogs, she always had something to say. Some found her helpful. Others thought she was overly nosy. Her loud voice often carried across yards, and her opinions were rarely kept to herself. Next door to Karen lived Marcus Johnson, a soft-spoken professional who had recently moved into the area. Unlike Karen, Marcus preferred a quieter life. He spent his days fixing computer issues for clients remotely and his evenings tinkering with gadgets in his garage. Tall and reserved, Marcus wasn't the type to strike up conversations unless prompted. When he did speak, however, his calm demeanor and thoughtful words left a lasting impression. Despite his friendly nature, some neighbors hesitated to approach him, unsure how to connect with someone so different from themselves. Karen, in particular, seemed wary of Marcus from the moment he arrived. She watched him unload boxes from his car on moving day, her arms crossed tightly, as if bracing for trouble. Over the weeks that followed, Karen noticed little things about Marcus that fueled her unease. He drove a modest sedan rather than a flashy SUV like most people on the block. His yard didn't have the same manicured perfection as hers. And then there was the fact that he worked from home, a detail Karen found suspicious. In her mind, anyone who stayed indoors all day must be hiding something. Despite Karen's suspicions, the rest of the neighborhood welcomed Marcus warmly. Mrs. Patel from across the street brought over homemade cookies, while Mr. Harris offered tips on the best local gardening supplies. Even Jake, the teenage boy 2 doors down, stopped by to introduce himself and ask about Marcus's job. Everyone seemed eager to make him feel at home. Everyone except Karen. One afternoon, as Marcus sat on his porch sipping tea, Karen marched over with a clipboard in hand. "We need to talk," she announced without preamble. Startled, Marcus set his cup down and nodded politely. Karen launched into a lecture about neighborhood rules, emphasizing the importance of maintaining property values and avoiding disturbances. Though Marcus listened patiently, he couldn't help but notice the thinly veiled scrutiny behind her words. As the days passed, Karen continued to keep a close eye on Marcus. She peeked through her curtains when his lights stayed on late at night. She frowned when delivery trucks pulled into his driveway more often than she deemed necessary. And when her Wi-Fi signal started acting strangely one evening, her suspicions reached new heights. Little did she know, her assumptions were about to lead her down a path full of surprises and lessons she wouldn't soon forget. The next morning, the calm of the neighborhood was shattered by the sound of Karen's determined footsteps stomping up Marcus's driveway. Her face was flushed, her hands clenched into tight fists at her sides, and her clipboard, the same one she'd used during their previous encounter, was tucked under her arm like a weapon. She didn't even bother to knock before barging onto Marcus's porch, where he sat quietly sipping his morning coffee. "Marcus Johnson," Karen barked, her voice sharp enough to startle a bird perched on the railing. "I need to talk to you right now." Marcus nearly spilled his coffee as he turned to face her. He placed the mug down carefully and stood up, his expression calm but curious. "Good morning, Karen," he said politely. "Is everything okay?" "Okay." "No, everything is not okay," Karen snapped, waving her arms dramatically. "You've been messing with my Wi-Fi. I know it was you. You changed the password, didn't you? How dare you just waltz in here and think you can take over my network?" Marcus blinked, taken aback by the sudden accusation. "Wait, hold on," he said, raising his hand slightly in a gesture of peace. I haven't touched your Wi-Fi, Karen. I don't even know your Wi-Fi name or password. Oh, please, Karen scoffed, rolling her eyes. Don't play dumb with me. I saw you fiddling around outside yesterday. You were probably trying to hack into my system so you could use my internet for free. Well, let me tell you something. I'm not falling for it. Marcus sighed, realizing this wasn't going to be a quick conversation. He gestured toward the chair across from him. Why don't you sit down, Karen, and we can figure this out together? I promise I didn't do anything to your Wi-Fi. But Karen wasn't interested in sitting or listening. Her volume only grew louder as she continued her tirade. Figure it out. There's nothing to figure out. You're guilty, Marcus. Guilty. And I want you to fix it right now, or I'll call the police. By now, a small crowd had begun to gather. Neighbors peeked out of their windows or lingered near their driveways, curious about the commotion. Mrs. Patel stepped out onto her porch, clutching a cup of tea, while Mr. Harris paused mid-lawn mowing to watch the scene unfold. Even Jake, the teenager 2 doors down, poked his head out of his bedroom window, intrigued by the drama. Karen, Marcus tried again, keeping his tone measured despite the growing tension. I understand you're upset, but I really didn't touch your Wi-Fi. If you'd like, I can help you check your router settings to see what's going on. Sometimes, these things happen because of technical glitches, not because someone hacked into your system. But Karen wasn't having any of it. She jabbed a finger in his direction, her voice rising even higher. Technical glitches. Don't give me that nonsense. I know exactly what's happening here. You moved in, saw how nice and orderly our neighborhood is, and decided to ruin everything. Well, I won't stand for it, Marcus. Not in my backyard. Marcus rubbed the bridge of his nose, sensing that reasoning with Karen in her current state was futile. Still, he refused to lose his temper. Instead, he nodded slowly. All right, Karen. If it will make you feel better, I'll look into it. But I need you to trust me when I say I didn't do anything wrong. Karen huffed, clearly unconvinced. Fine. But if I find out you're lying. She trailed off ominously, then spun on her heel and marched back to her house, leaving Marcus standing alone on his porch. As the neighbors dispersed, some shaking their heads and others whispering among themselves, Marcus sank back into his chair. He stared at his half-empty coffee mug, wondering how such a simple misunderstanding had spiraled so quickly out of control. What puzzled him most, though, was Karen's unwavering certainty that he was responsible. Little did either of them know, the real issue was far more complicated, and far closer to home than either could have imagined. Later that afternoon, Karen was still fuming. She paced back and forth in her living room, muttering under her breath about Marcus and his suspicious behavior. Her Wi-Fi issue had only gotten worse. Now she couldn't even connect to the internet at all. Frustrated and convinced that Marcus was behind it, she decided to take matters into her own hands. First, Karen called the local internet service provider, ISP. After waiting on hold for what felt like an eternity, she finally got through to a customer service representative. With her usual air of authority, Karen launched into an explanation of her problem. Someone hacked into my Wi-Fi, she declared. It's probably my neighbor Marcus Johnson. He's been acting very strange lately. Can you check if he accessed my account? The representative assured her they would look into it and asked for her account information. A few minutes later, the rep returned with some surprising news. Ma'am, I've checked your account activity, they said, and there's no record of anyone accessing or tampering with your Wi-Fi remotely. Everything on our end looks secure. Karen's jaw dropped. That can't be right, she exclaimed. Are you sure? My Wi-Fi isn't working properly. It has to be him. I'm sorry, ma'am, the representative replied patiently, but based on our records, no one has breached your account. It's possible there's another issue, like a router malfunction or interference from another device. You might want to reset your router or consult a technician. Hanging up the phone, Karen felt a mix of anger and confusion. If Marcus hadn't hacked into her Wi-Fi, Then who, or what, was causing the problem? Reluctantly, she began to entertain the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she had jumped to conclusions too quickly. But instead of letting go of her suspicions entirely, Karen doubled down. She stormed out of her house once again, this time determined to confront Marcus with the ISP's findings and demand answers. When she arrived at Marcus's door, she didn't bother knocking. Instead, she barged in as soon as he opened it, her clipboard clutched tightly in her hand. "Okay, fine," she said, trying to sound calm but failing miserably. "The ISP says you didn't hack into my account, but something is still wrong with my Wi-Fi. And since you're the tech expert, you must know more than you're letting on." Marcus raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by her dramatic entrance. "I already told you, Karen. I didn't do anything to your Wi-Fi. But if you'd like, I can help you troubleshoot the issue. Sometimes these problems are simpler than they seem." Karen hesitated for a moment, torn between pride and desperation. Finally, she sighed and nodded. "Fine. Help me. But if I find out you're lying..." "You won't," Marcus interrupted gently, grabbing his laptop and heading toward her house. "Let's see what's going on." Once inside Karen's home, Marcus immediately went to work. He crouched beside her router, examining the blinking lights and checking the settings. As he scrolled through the network logs, his brow furrowed. Something wasn't adding up. There were multiple devices connected to Karen's Wi-Fi that didn't belong to her, including one labeled Jake's iPhone. "Karen," Marcus said slowly, turning to face her, "do you know anyone named Jake?" Karen frowned, thinking hard. Then her eyes widened in realization. "Jake, you mean that kid 2 houses down? The teenager who's always glued to his phone?" Marcus nodded. "It looks like he's been using your Wi-Fi without permission. That could explain why your connection has been unstable." Karen's face turned bright red with indignation. Without another word, she stormed out of the house, heading straight for Jake's front door. Moments later, she returned with Jake in tow, the teenager looking sheepish and avoiding eye contact. "Is this your phone?" Karen demanded, pointing to the device name on Marcus's screen. Jake shuffled his feet awkwardly. "Oh, yeah. I didn't think you'd mind. Your Wi-Fi doesn't have a password, so I figured it was okay." Karen stared at him, dumbfounded. For weeks, she had suspected Marcus of being the culprit, only to discover that the real offender was a teenager who couldn't resist free internet. As embarrassment washed over her, Karen mumbled an apology to Marcus. But Marcus wasn't done yet. While reviewing Karen's router logs further, he noticed something odd. A series of failed login attempts originating from an unfamiliar IP address. His expression grew serious as he realized this wasn't just about Jake. Something far more concerning was lurking in the shadows of Karen's network, and now it was up to him to uncover the truth. Karen stood frozen in her living room, her arms crossed tightly as Marcus continued to examine her router logs. The initial embarrassment of discovering Jake's unauthorized use of her Wi-Fi was quickly overshadowed by a growing sense of unease. Marcus's expression had shifted from calm curiosity to something more serious. His brow furrowed, and his fingers moved rapidly across the keyboard as he delved deeper into the data. "Karen," Marcus said finally, his voice low but steady, "there's something else here. Something you should know." Karen's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What is it?" Marcus turned the laptop screen toward her, pointing to a series of entries labeled with strange IP addresses. "See these? These are failed login attempts. Someone, or something, has been trying to access your network repeatedly. They haven't succeeded yet, but they're persistent." Karen's face paled. "But I don't understand. Why would anyone want to hack into my Wi-Fi? I'm nobody special." "It's not always about targeting specific people," Marcus explained patiently. "Hackers often scan neighborhoods for vulnerable networks. If they find one that's unsecured or poorly protected, they'll try to break in. Once inside, they can do all sorts of things: steal personal information, spy on connected devices, even use your internet connection for illegal activities. Karen's mind raced. She thought about all the times she'd shopped online, entered passwords, and checked her bank account while connected to her home Wi-Fi. What if someone had been watching her every move? The idea sent a chill down her spine. "I need to fix this," Karen said urgently, her voice trembling. "Tell me what to do." Marcus nodded reassuringly. "First, we need to secure your network properly. That means setting a strong password and enabling encryption. Then, we'll update your router's firmware and check if any of your smart devices have been compromised." As Marcus worked, Karen hovered anxiously nearby, peppering him with questions. "How did this happen? Why didn't I notice sooner?" "It happens more often than you'd think," Marcus replied. "A lot of people set up their routers once and never touch them again. Without proper security measures, your network becomes an easy target." While updating the router settings, Marcus stumbled upon another alarming discovery. One of Karen's smart home devices, a security camera installed near her front door, had been accessed remotely. Whoever had tried to breach her network had managed to gain partial control over the camera feed. "Karen," Marcus said carefully, showing her the evidence on his laptop, "it looks like someone briefly tapped into your security camera. They may have seen footage of your house, or worse, recorded it." Karen gasped, clutching her chest. "My camera? You mean they could have seen inside my house? Watched me?" Marcus hesitated before answering. "It's possible. But don't panic. We'll disconnect the camera temporarily and change its credentials. After that, we'll monitor your network closely to make sure no one tries anything again." Karen sank onto the couch, overwhelmed by the revelation. For weeks, she had accused Marcus of being the problem, when in reality, she had been unknowingly vulnerable to real threats. Her mistrust of him now seemed ridiculous compared to the danger she had faced. "I feel so stupid," Karen muttered, shaking her head. "I wasted all this time blaming you when I should have been paying attention to my own security." "You're not stupid," Marcus reassured her. "This kind of thing happens because most people don't realize how exposed their devices can be. The important thing is that we caught it in time and can prevent it from happening again." As Marcus continued working, Karen sat quietly, reflecting on everything that had transpired. She realized how wrong she had been, not just about Marcus, but about assuming the worst without evidence. Now, with Marcus's help, she had the chance to fix not only her Wi-Fi, but also her relationship with her neighbor. By the time Marcus finished securing her network, night had fallen outside. Karen walked him to the door, her gratitude evident in her softened tone. "Thank you, Marcus," she said sincerely. "I owe you an apology for everything." Marcus smiled warmly. "Apology accepted. Just promise me one thing. Next time something seems off, come to me first instead of jumping to conclusions." Karen nodded, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. But as she closed the door behind him, she couldn't shake the lingering question: who had been trying to hack into her life, and why? As Karen sat on her couch that evening, staring at the blinking lights of her newly secured router, her mind raced with questions. Who had been trying to hack into her network? Why would anyone target her, of all people? The thought sent a shiver down her spine. She had always seen herself as ordinary, just another face in the crowd. But now, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone out there was watching her, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Determined to get answers, Karen turned to Marcus, who was still seated at her dining table, reviewing the logs on his laptop. "Marcus," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "can you trace where those failed login attempts came from? Maybe figure out who's behind this?" Marcus nodded, his expression serious but calm. "I can try," he replied. "But tracking down hackers isn't always straightforward. They often use fake IP addresses or route their activity through other networks to hide their tracks." Karen bit her lip, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "So what you're saying is, we might never know who did this?" "It's possible," Marcus admitted, "but I'll do my best to find something useful." Sometimes even small clues can point us in the right direction. For the next hour, Marcus worked silently, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he dug deeper into the data. Karen hovered nearby, alternating between pacing and sitting anxiously on the edge of her chair. Finally, Marcus leaned back with a heavy sigh. "Okay, I think I found something," he said, turning the screen toward her. On the monitor was a list of IP addresses, along with timestamps and geolocation details. One address stood out. It originated from a server located in another state. "This one looks suspicious," Marcus explained. "It matches the pattern of known cybercriminal groups that specialize in targeting home networks." Karen's eyes widened. "Cybercriminals? You mean like actual criminals?" "Yes," Marcus confirmed. "These groups scan neighborhoods for unsecured networks, looking for ways to steal personal information or hijack devices. In your case, they probably saw that your Wi-Fi didn't have a strong password and decided to take a shot." A wave of nausea washed over Karen as she processed the information. Her carelessness had made her vulnerable, not just to harmless freeloaders like Jake, but to dangerous individuals who could have ruined her life. "What happens now?" she asked weakly. "Are they still trying to get in?" "Not anymore," Marcus reassured her. "Once we updated your security settings, they lost access completely. But we need to stay vigilant. If they realize you've locked them out, they might try again using different methods." Karen swallowed hard, her mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. What if they had already stolen her banking information? Or worse, gained access to her security cameras? The thought of strangers potentially spying on her made her skin crawl. Seeing the fear in her eyes, Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Don't panic, Karen. We caught this early, and we've taken steps to protect you. The important thing now is to stay proactive. Keep your passwords updated, enable two-factor authentication wherever possible, and monitor your accounts regularly for any unusual activity." Karen nodded, though her hands were still shaking. "Thank you, Marcus," she whispered. "I don't know what I would have done without your help." "You'd have figured it out," Marcus said kindly. "But I'm glad I could be here to guide you through it." As the night wore on, Karen couldn't stop thinking about how close she had come to disaster. It wasn't just about the potential theft of her personal information. It was about the invasion of her privacy, the violation of her sense of safety. For years, she had prided herself on being in control of her life, but this experience had shown her just how fragile that control really was. The next morning, Karen woke up with a renewed determination. She spent hours researching cybersecurity tips online, taking detailed notes and bookmarking helpful articles. By the time Marcus stopped by later that day to check on her, she had already implemented several additional safeguards, including setting up alerts for unauthorized login attempts. "You've been busy," Marcus remarked with a smile, glancing at the stack of papers on her kitchen counter. "I'm not taking any chances," Karen replied firmly. "If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that ignorance isn't bliss. It's risky." Marcus chuckled. "Well, I'm proud of you. Most people wouldn't go to such lengths after something like this. But then again, you're not most people." Karen smiled faintly, appreciating the compliment. For the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope. Though the threat of cybercrime loomed large, she knew she wasn't. Over the next few days, Karen found herself reflecting deeply on everything that had happened. For so long, she had prided herself on being the watchdog of the neighborhood, someone who kept things in line and made sure everyone followed the rules. But now, she realized how misguided her approach had been. Instead of fostering trust and cooperation, her actions had created unnecessary tension and almost blinded her to the real dangers lurking in plain sight. Determined to make amends, Karen decided to take a step she never thought she would. She knocked on Marcus's door. When he opened it, his expression was neutral, but there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. "Karen," he said, stepping aside. "Come in." She hesitated for a moment before walking inside. His home was tidy yet welcoming, with shelves lined with books about technology and gadgets scattered neatly on his workbench. It was clear that Marcus valued order, much like Karen did, but in a quieter, more thoughtful way. "Marcus," Karen began, her voice softer than usual, "I owe you an apology. A real one this time." She took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I jumped to conclusions about you because, well, honestly, I don't know why. Maybe I was scared or just too quick to blame others instead of looking at the facts. Whatever the reason, it wasn't fair to you." Marcus listened silently, his arms crossed but his posture relaxed. When Karen finished, he nodded slowly. "Apology accepted," he said simply. "But if you really want to move forward, let me help you understand what happened and how to prevent it from happening again." Relieved by his willingness to forgive, Karen agreed without hesitation. Over the course of the afternoon, Marcus patiently walked her through the basics of cybersecurity. He showed her how to create strong passwords, explained the importance of enabling encryption on her router, and even helped her download apps to monitor her network activity. "You'd be surprised how many people overlook these simple steps," Marcus said as they worked together. "It's not just about protecting your Wi-Fi. It's about protecting yourself. Hackers prey on carelessness, not specific targets." Karen nodded earnestly, taking notes on a small pad of paper. "I had no idea any of this mattered so much. I just assumed plugging in the router was enough." "It's easy to think that," Marcus replied. "But technology is always evolving, and so are the threats. Staying informed is half the battle." As they talked, Karen noticed something she hadn't before. Marcus wasn't just knowledgeable, he was kind. Despite her earlier hostility, he had treated her with patience and respect, never once rubbing her mistakes in her face. It was a quality she admired, especially now that she saw how wrong she had been. By the time they finished securing her devices, the sun was setting outside, casting warm golden light through Marcus's windows. Karen stood up, feeling a mix of gratitude and resolve. "Thank you, Marcus," she said sincerely, "not just for fixing my Wi-Fi, but for teaching me all this. I promise I'll do better moving forward, not just with tech stuff, but with people too." Marcus smiled warmly. "That's all anyone can ask for, Karen. We all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them." The next day, Karen took another bold step. She called Jake and his parents over for a conversation, not to scold him, but to explain why using someone else's Wi-Fi without permission was wrong. To her surprise, Jake apologized sincerely and promised to stay off unsecured networks in the future. His parents thanked Karen for handling the situation maturely, and the awkwardness between them melted away. Word of Karen's transformation spread quickly through the neighborhood. Neighbors who had once avoided her now greeted her warmly, impressed by her newfound humility. At the weekly farmers market, Mrs. Patel complimented Karen on her positive attitude, while Mr. Harris joked that she might finally win Neighbor of the Year. For the first time in years, Karen felt like she truly belonged. And though she still kept a watchful eye on her street, it was no longer out of suspicion or fear, but out of a genuine desire to protect the community she now cherished. Weeks passed, and the neighborhood buzzed with a renewed sense of camaraderie. The tension that had once lingered between Karen and Marcus was replaced by something unexpected: friendship. What started as an awkward misunderstanding had blossomed into mutual respect and even admiration. Karen, who used to keep her distance from others, now found herself looking forward to conversations with Marcus. She marveled at how much she had learned from him, not just about technology, but about patience, kindness, and giving people the benefit of the doubt. The turning point came during the annual block party, a tradition that brought the entire community together for food, games, and laughter. This year, however, there was an added air of excitement. As neighbors mingled under strings of twinkling lights, Karen stood near the grill, flipping burgers alongside Mr. Harris. Gone were her usual complaints about noise or parking. Instead, she laughed freely, sharing stories and jokes with those around her. But it was later in the evening, when everyone gathered around the fire pit, that Karen decided to address the elephant in the room. Holding a glass of lemonade, she cleared her throat nervously and stepped into the circle of chairs. "I know some of you might still be wondering what happened with my Wi-Fi fiasco," she began, her tone lighthearted but sincere. "Well, let me tell you, it wasn't pretty." A few chuckles rippled through the group, easing the mood. Encouraged, Karen continued, "I accused Marcus here of hacking into my network, which, as it turns out, was completely wrong. Not only did I embarrass myself, but I also missed the real issue entirely. Someone had been trying to hack into my system, and if Marcus hadn't helped me, I might have lost control of my personal information." She paused, glancing at Marcus, who gave her an encouraging nod. "What I'm trying to say is, I owe Marcus a huge thank you. He didn't have to help me after everything I said, but he did. And because of him, I've learned so much, not just about protecting my home, but about being a better neighbor." The crowd erupted into applause, and Marcus raised his hands modestly. "It's not just me," he said with a grin. "Karen put in the work to fix things. She could have ignored the problem, but she didn't. That takes courage." Karen blushed, unused to such praise but grateful for it all the same. From that night on, she became a different person, one who listened more than she spoke, who asked questions before jumping to conclusions, and who always offered help when needed. Her transformation inspired others too. Neighbors began hosting small get-togethers, sharing meals, and lending a hand whenever someone needed assistance. Even Jake, the teenager who had unknowingly sparked the whole ordeal, found himself welcomed into the fold. Inspired by Karen's apology, he started volunteering to help older neighbors with their tech issues, earning their trust and gratitude. One Saturday morning, Karen spotted him setting up Mrs. Patel's new tablet and couldn't help but smile. "Looks like we got ourselves a young id expert," she joked, ruffling his hair playfully. As autumn arrived, painting the trees in vibrant shades of red and gold, Karen often sat on her porch, sipping tea and watching the world go by. She no longer felt the need to micromanage every detail of the neighborhood. Instead, she embraced its quirks, the way Mr. Harris always forgot to turn off his sprinklers, or how Mrs. Patel's garden occasionally attracted stray cats. These imperfections, she realized, were what made the community feel alive. One crisp evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Marcus joined her on the porch. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one. "You've come a long way, Karen," Marcus said finally, breaking the quiet. "So have you," Karen replied with a soft laugh. "Who would have thought we'd end up friends after all that?" Marcus smiled. "Sometimes life throws us curveballs for a reason. It's how we respond that matters." Karen nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. For the first time in years, she truly felt at home, not just in her house, but in the neighborhood she had grown to love. And though challenges would inevitably arise, she knew she wouldn't face them alone. After all, she had learned the most important lesson of all. A strong community isn't built on suspicion or fear. It's built on trust, understanding, and a willingness to grow together.